my first question to you, Felipe, is really, could you explain the title, the dark animal, the dark beast? What does that refer to, really?
Bueno, muchas gracias a los espectadores que se quedaron luego de la proyección, porque yo sé que después de este tipo de películas uno no quiere saber nada más, quiere irse a su casa, pensar en lo que uno vio, en lo que uno escuchó, en lo que está digiriendo, y ya quedarse todavía a escuchar más, pues les agradezco muchísimo.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having seen the film, and I know after seeing this film it's quite tough, and usually people can imagine that you don't want to know more after that, so that you did stay and you do not want to know more. I appreciate it.
Bueno, Oscuro Animal efectivamente es una metáfora de algo que es una metáfora atmosférica, una metáfora política.
Actually, dark animal is a metaphor. It's like an atmospheric metaphor and a political metaphor.
Y yo la entiendo como eso que está alrededor de la sociedad, en este caso la sociedad colombiana, y que no sabes cuándo te va a atacar. En cualquier momento te da el zarpazo y te da un impacto violento.
And it's something like it's around you everywhere, and you don't know when it will attack. So out of nothing, all of a sudden there will be a grab to you when it does attack.
Y creo que los colombianos estamos acostumbrados a este oscuro animal.
And I think we Colombians are used to this kind of dark animal.
So there are many things to discuss about this film. There's the fact that it's about 3 women, the fact that it has separate stories structured in a certain way, and also, of course, the fact that it has no dialogue. But what was the initial idea? What was the thing that came to you first when you decided that you wanted to make this film?
Bueno, esta historia de Oscuro Animal yo la vengo trabajando desde hace aproximadamente unos 15, 20 años, hace bastante tiempo.
Well, this story, Oscuro Animal, Dark Animal, I've been working on it for about 15, 20 years, quite some time by now.
Cuando la violencia en mi país, cuando la guerra, el conflicto armado era muchísimo más fuerte que ahora y mucho más sanguinaria.
When I started this, when the conflict in Colombia was much more violent and much more bloody.
Y cuando también no se sabía nada de lo que estaba pasando, había masacres y no sabíamos cuánta gente había muerto porque habían tantas en tanto momento y tanta gente las perpetraba que era una situación muy enredada. No se sabía por qué, o las víctimas no estaban autorizadas a hablar, había mucho miedo.
And it was also a time where we didn't really have an idea of what was happening and what was going on and who was doing it to whom, and like the victims, who they were the victim of, and they were not allowed to talk, so there was a lot of fear.
En realidad sí sabíamos lo que estaba pasando.
In reality, actually, we did know what was happening.
Era una guerra perpetrada por grupos paramilitares enfrentados con la guerrilla y el Estado estaba inmiscuido.
It was a war which was basically perpetrated for paramilitary organization against the rebels, the guerrilla, and the government, y el gobierno.
Estaba involucrado también.
And the government was involved as well.
Era una guerra impresionante.
It was quite, in a way, an impressive war.
Entonces en esos años yo me interesé mucho de esto porque efectivamente en cierta medida yo también soy víctima del conflicto.
So in those years I was quite interested because actually in a certain way I'm also a victim of this conflict.
Yo no vivo en mi país desde hace 20 años, salí del país por otros motivos, pero efectivamente me sentía atacado, mi integridad estaba herida.
I haven't lived in my country for the last 20 years. I moved away 20 years ago, but and I left my country for other reasons, but in a way I do feel affected. I do feel affected by it.
Entonces en esos momentos yo empecé una investigación sobre la violencia, sobre la guerra y sobre cómo se afectaba esto a las víctimas.
So at that time I started doing research, I started investigating about the conflict, about the violence, and also about the victims.
Hablé con las víctimas, con organizaciones, con estudiosos, estuve en el campo, estuve escuchando. Repito, no no se sabía tanto, había que ir a buscar, había que leer los reportes de Amnesty, de Human Rights Watch.
So I talked to victims, I talked to people studying the situation of the victims, I went into the field to see them, and again, I repeat, in those days we didn't know that much. I also talked to organizations like Human Rights Watch and Amnesty.
Y las mujeres estaban en el centro.
And women were always in the center, they were in the focus.
At which point did you decide to not have any dialogue? I mean, at one point you hear the men talking together, but there is no dialogue. When did you decide that and why?
No fue una decisión dogmática querer hacer una película sin diálogos. No, yo no empecé el proyecto queriendo hacer una película sin diálogos.
It was not a dogmatic decision to make a film without dialogues. I did not start and thinking like I want to make a film without dialogues.
Pero en el desarrollo del proyecto, en el proceso de escritura, yo me fui dando cuenta que no sentía las palabras, no me salían las palabras. Yo sentía que estaba aprisionado, que las palabras no me salían, a mí tampoco.
But in the process of developing the film and while I was writing it, I didn't feel words coming out. I didn't feel the need of words. I didn't feel any pressure for having any words in the film.
No. En cierta medida también me parecía irrespetuoso decir algo.
In a certain way, it also felt like showing lack of respect to say something.
Y me parecía que esto ayudó también a crear un mundo aislado a las protagonistas.
And I think that also helped to create like an isolated world of the protagonists, of the main characters.
Y lentamente me fui dando cuenta que el silencio en este caso era mucho más fuerte que cualquier palabra.
And evidently I've started finding out in the end that the silence in this project was much stronger than words.
Era también una propuesta política, ¿no?
It was also like a political motivation.
Y lentamente se fue convirtiendo en un dispositivo sonoro radical.
And so slowly it started developing into a device, into a radical device?
Audio radical device.
An audio radical device.
And the structure is also very interesting because you focus on each woman for quite a long time. You're not constantly intercutting between them, which is what many other directors would have done. Why did you choose to take that approach with the narrative structure?
Bueno, yo antes que director soy montajista de profesión, me considero montajista.
Well, before being a director, I am an editor, so I'm seen as an editor of film.
Estoy involucrado con la industria colombiana, soy el editor de muchas películas colombianas.
I'm involved in the Colombian film industry, so I'm an editor of many Colombian films.
Esto simplemente quiere decir que tengo una cabeza matemática.
So that simply is saying that I have a mathematical head.
Y compongo mis películas de una manera bastante estructural.
So I compose my films in a quite structural, very structural way.
Y obviamente esto tiene que ver muchísimo en la repartición de las piezas de esta película.
And of course that has a lot of influence, has a lot to say about the repartición,
the way the parts are,
the way the film is edited.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's almost like building blocks. You have big blocks at the beginning, and gradually the blocks get a little smaller until they get together. It's like a pyramid. Mm-hmm. The consequence of having this narrative method and no dialogue means that sometimes we don't really know what is happening in terms of very specific details. So, in fact, the whole film is not specific. You don't say this is based in a particular country, this is a particular city. It's left quite unclear who these groups are. Did you ever worry that sometimes that might be a bit too abstract a way of going forward with the thing? And why did you actually really want to make it non-specific?
Es un halago para mí esto.
Un halago?
Un halago, un cumplido, algo bueno.
It's like an achievement for me. Yes.
Porque es uno de los objetivos del proyecto.
That was one of the objectives, one of the aims I had with this project.
La guerra en Colombia es o como la llamamos nosotros para suavizarnos el oído, el conflicto armado.
The war in Colombia is, or as we call it, to soften it a bit, the armed conflict.
Es algo que tenemos desde hace 60 años.
It's something we have been having for 60 years now.
Y quizá, bueno, efectivamente 60 años. Y se ha escrito, se ha hablado mucho, se ha representado mucho, quizá a la exacerbación, quizá un poco demasiado.
There is a lot of is written about it, there's used a lot about it, and actually until the exaggerating, there's a lot of exaggeration about it.
Desde el punto de vista del arte, también se ha cuestionado la representación de esto.
From the artistic point of view, it's also been questioned. The representation of this conflict has also been questioned.
Los artistas que trabajamos con la realidad, que trabajamos con el conflicto en Colombia, es un lugar común, es un tópico.
So the we artists that work with this conflict, it's like a commonplace, it's a topic.
Y en el cine colombiano se ha recaído muchísimo en representar el conflicto de muchas maneras y yo no estoy tan seguro que sean las más interesantes.
And in the Colombian cinema and the Colombian filmmaking, this conflict has been represented in many different ways, and I'm not so sure if it were the very right ways.
Aunque efectivamente yo hago parte de una generación que piensa lo mismo que yo.
Although I'm part of a generation that thinks the same as I do.
Entonces, cuando yo empecé a trabajar este proyecto, yo quise reinterpretar, borrar, cambiar piezas y volverme efectivamente más abstracto, más simbólico, volverlo más universal.
So when I started this project, I wanted to reinterpret and to erase and to change and to find a new way of representing this.
Volviendo más abstracto, más simbólico.
And becoming more abstract, more symbolic.
Y este trabajo lo hicimos también desde un punto de vista del arte, por ejemplo, los vestuarios que tienen las milicias. Nos inventamos una nueva milicia. Eso no representa a una milicia colombiana.
So in this sense, we also, from an artistic point of view, for instance, the suits and the clothing of the soldiers, they don't represent any kind of armed group within Colombia. They're completely made up.
Lo que queríamos era esto, cruzar un poco y tratar de volverlo un poco más universal y a la vez más simbólico, y el riesgo era perder un poco la relación con la realidad también, ¿no?
And so that's what we wanted to do, to make it more universal and make it more abstract. And doing that, so we do take the risk of losing a bit of reality.
Creo que el espectador necesita un poco algunas cosas un poco más seguras, digamos.
I believe the watchers, the viewers, need a thing a bit more sure.
Pero estoy acostumbrado a hacer algún tipo de películas más arriesgadas y cargarme la responsabilidad.
But I'm used to making more risky films and take the responsibility.
One thing that struck me, and I'm sure it struck people here, is the immensely expressive soundtrack, which you depend upon so much because there is no dialogue. Could you just talk? Did you work for a very long time on that? What was that you wanted to do particularly with the soundtrack?
El sonido para mí es más importante que la imagen.
For me, the sound is more important than the image.
El sonido para mí soy un apasionado del sonido, me encanta.
It's the sound is, well, I'm passionate. I'm an apasionado, passionate. I love the sound.
Y trabajo la narración con el sonido y voy a tratar de explicarlo de una manera un poco menos conceptual.
So I work in a narrative with the sound, and I'm going to try to explain it in a bit not too conceptual way.
En todos mis trabajos yo vengo de hacer documentales de ensayo, documentales más experimentales que se han mostrado en este festival.
In my work, I usually make documentaries and more experimental documentaries that have also were shown in this festival.
Donde yo el fundamento que está a la base de estos proyectos desde un punto de vista conceptual
So the foundation, which is at the base from a conceptual point of view,
es la ruptura entre la imagen y el sonido. Quiero decir, la ruptura que hay entre esa relación obligadamente simbiótica entre la imagen y el sonido.
so it's the breaking up between the image and the sound, and I mean breaking up, stopping with the obligated, the mandatory relationship of the connection of the image and the sound.
Siempre trabajé el sonido independientemente, fuera de esta dictadura de la imagen.
I always worked with the sound separated, away outside of this dictatorship from the image.
Siempre. Quizá
Always.
esto se debe porque empecé a trabajar el cine en moviola, con la imagen y el sonido por otro lado.
Maybe this is because I started working the film. When I started working in film, it was moviola, which was one hand was the image and the other hand was the sound.
Y la imagen para mí es el espacio y el sonido es el tiempo.
And for me, the image is the space, and the sound is the time.
I have time for one more quick question myself, and then we'll throw it over to the audience. The film begins and ends with water. I'm sure that's not accidental. Nothing in filmmaking is accidental. Could you just say, is that symbolic?
Sí. El agua como metáfora de castigo y redención.
Yeah, it's water. It's like the metaphor of punishment and redemption.
Okay, now, if any of you have questions, there's a microphone there. Anybody somebody must have a question. You don't have to imitate the film, you can speak. Could you just go, is it possible just to go to the, thank you.
Felipe, thank you very much for the film. I come from Colombia, and it's very significant to see like this representation of what we live there. And my question is, why did you decide to take 3 situations instead of just one? And that because I think it's also something that is beginning to happen in our national filmmaking, to say so. So I would like to know more about that decision.
¿Me lo puedes preguntar por favor en español?
Claro. La decisión de haber hecho 3 historias y no solo una historia, porque siento que eso pues viene pasando como en el cine colombiano, entonces no sé si eso tiene que ver con algo generacional o si puedes hablar de eso.
Ok. No, la decisión de haber partido la película en 3 no sigue ninguna moda, digamos.
Well, the decision to divide the film up in 3 is not following any fashion.
Lo que el amigo está diciendo es porque hace poco salió una película que se llama Violencia, que también son 3 historias.
So what I guess a friend is saying is that recently a film came out called Violencia, which is about 3 situations.
Que se presentó el año pasado en Forum en Berlín.
That came out at Forum in Berlin last year.
Y es efectivamente una de las películas sobre las cuales tengo bastante conflicto sobre la representación.
And that's obviously one of the films I have quite some conflict about in the representation.
Y me asombró que también hubiera trabajado un tríptico.
And I was surprised that they also made a triptychal.
Y decidí que mi película fuera un tríptico en realidad de hace como 15 años.
And I have to say my film was this triptychal since for 15 years already.
Anybody else? Any more questions?
Can you tell? Can you explain why? I mean, why? ¿Puedes explicar por qué esta razón de las 3?
Claro. Yo creo que quería hablar de 3 mujeres que de diferentes maneras les estaba pasando algo con la guerra.
My reason for having this three was I wanted to talk about three women happening things to them in different situations, in another way, in different ways.
Y quería tocar también diferentes edades de mujeres que
And
les estaba pasando algo.
I also wanted to show three different ages of women and what was happening to them.
Y de diferentes entornos.
And the different surroundings.
Y ahí se mezcla como una ensalada.
And that you mix up like a salad.
Anybody else? I do actually have one short question, which is more partly a comment. One thing I like very much about the film is that you don't sentimentalize or exaggerate anything. So even when the first woman we see encounters the little girl, it's sort of tender, but it's certainly not sentimental. She doesn't smile, she doesn't really help her at first. Were you determined to keep everything quite muted?
Sí, fue una decisión de dirección de actores, que los comportamientos fueran un poco más secos, más fríos y con una actuación más hierática.
Yes, there was like a decisión de doctores.
Una decisión de dirección de actores.
There was actually a decision to direct the actors that way, that it was a bit more erratic.
Y más frío, más seco.
And colder and more dry.
Y creo que viene del guión también. Si leías el guión, te relacionabas con el guión de una manera como que sentías que los personajes eran duros también, ¿no?
And I think it also comes from the script, because if you read the script, I think reading the script, you feel like the characters in it, they are a bit kind of tough in a way.
Y de repente me di cuenta que la niña también hacía lo mismo y era increíble. Eso fue un descubrimiento.
And suddenly I found out that the little girl was doing the same thing, and that was quite a discovery.
Era severa ella, la niña era severa.
She was severe, she was serious.
Y para mí fue un descubrimiento.
And for me, that was quite a discovery.
Me ayudó muchísimo justamente la relación con la actriz.
It helped me very much in the relationship with the actress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I'm afraid time has run out, so please thank you, Felipe Guerrero, and also thank you, Jasper, for translating.
Thank you, Jasper.